So today's topic is passion. And it's not the kind of passion that you're thinking about. It's actually the passion that we all have in life at one point or another. And then we hit a crossroads. Do we follow it? Do we invest in it? Or do we do what we're told or what we should or what we must in order to survive in life and then hit a certain age and realize I'm really not even living my life. I'm living the life that everybody else wanted me to live. So, what are your passions and how did you discover them? And what advice do you have for our audience to identify theirs if they're at their own crossroads or way past the crossroads and want to, pedal backwards a bit and rediscover what their passions are?
So for me, it's not so simple because those passions come and go for me. I had several over the years. Well, it's all started with my dad. I saw my dad having one passion for something, and then I wanted to kind of have my own. But instead of doing what he wanted, I kind of went my own way, and I got into sports. And um, I was a huge fan of Chicago Bulls, and I wanted to become a basketball player since I was a young boy. And I had my whole room was decorated with Chicago Bulls posters. I would watch NBA games, and I would go play basketball with my brother all the time. And it was all about basketball until maybe when I was 13, 14 years old. The problem was that about that time, 13, 14 years old, I realized that there is a huge chance that I won't grow any taller and that there's no NBA for me in the future. And I had to kind of, give up that passion. I still go play basketball from time to time, but I had to give up that passion. And over those years, then I had to kind of reconsider and try other different things, sports and creative stuff. And there was periods of my life where I had been doing something passionately, and for long, thinking that this is something that I would do the rest of my life, and then dropped it. And then I had some periods of my life where I was a little bit lost and I had no passion because I couldn't figure out what's going to be the next one. And then recently I found my new passion, which is entrepreneurship and the video production company that I started. And this is the most recent, the most fiery passion going on right now. Along the way, I picked up football. I played for the club, and so I can still do that sport part in my spare time. But the main passion is business, and that's what kind of drives me every day now and gives me fire every time I wake up in the morning. So that's passion for me.
That was I'm very glad you went first, Alan, because that helped frame lots of thoughts in my mind too. I mean, I suppose it's quite hard to sometimes think about, like what was the thing that ignited it. And so as you were speaking there, I was thinking about what are the things that I've kind of gone through that have led me to what I'm doing now. And I actually think like I always liked like an element of performing, I suppose, not necessarily like performance in the like, putting on shows, although I might have done that as well. It's probably very true. But like this idea of like performing has always been big for me. And actually my first ever job was as a magician. And
that's pretty cool.
That's cool. And it's one of those things that like I just started calling at about 16, I just started calling myself a professional magician. Because I thought like, is there a qualifying body? I mean, there's the magic circle, but not every magician's in the magic circle. So I printed a business card that said I was a magician, and so that's as good as true. But then I somehow managed to get employed doing that. But I think what I enjoyed more than anything was like the whole like interaction with people and like getting a response from them and them enjoying what I was doing. Because then that led into like entrepreneurship for me, which I was very lucky. I didn't know that's what I wanted to do. In fact, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and no idea whatsoever. But I had this opportunity to take part in Young Enterprise school program, company program, which basically came into my school and let us like set up an enterprise idea. And that's really been what I've done ever since. And I think the thing for me that ignited my passion was because it was like whatever I put in resulted in the output. And I controlled how much I put in, and that then influenced how much came out. And it was so different to like the kind of like traditional jobs that lots of my kind of pals were getting. When I was like, even as a magician, I was self-employed. I was doing my own thing, and I really loved that. And as a magician at that age, at 16, I was getting paid way more than everybody else. I wasn't working nearly as many hours, but I was getting like the DJ wage in places. So that's what people would pay me to come into their pubs or whatever. And so that, I suppose, realizing that I have the skills, and that the more I do, the more that happens. That's definitely my passion. My passion is turned into like social business. I think that business, we all have to interact with business. Either we're employed by them or we buy from them, and they are one of the biggest vehicles for affecting positive change that we have, because as an employer and as people who employ people, or just even your customers or stakeholders, if you change the way you treat them, and that has an impact on the way they treat other people, then the more people you employ, the more family lives you impact, the more positively you can then, if you treat your employees well, they have the capacity to treat their partners well. They have the capacity to be a bit nicer to their kids because they're not as stressed. And I have control of that in my workplace. That's the thing I'm most passionate about, is the fact that I control the levers within my own world for doing something good, I suppose. And that's also makes it really hard sometimes too, and very daunting at times. And you feel under pressure knowing like, how do I do this? And my passion's very much changed over time. Like, it's evolved massively. What I was motivated by at the beginning is not the same thing I'm motivated by now, but that's thread of like having the creative control over how I design my own life is definitely the thing I'm most passionate about.
I'm Bruce. I'm still blown away by the magician bit. So, I mean, and I'm almost wanting to ask you questions about, like, I imagine at the age of about 16, being a magician, being able to do that in front of the class, that must have been amazing. Interestingly, I mean, the background that I came from, it was almost like I never really got full rein to indulge all my passions, because it was like I was kind of almost like I was born into a world where I was going to go on and become a doctor. Like, I have relatives, I knew at the age of 8 or 9 that I have relatives in Pakistan who are doctors. So it was almost like subtly, it's probably not even subtly, I probably don't realize, but I was like being given the messages that, this is what I've got to do. So it was almost like the passions that I had were things that I had to discover myself, and they were almost, it was like a world within it was my own personal world. So I think the first passions I ever developed was my love of comics and comic books. And I realized now that they were things that I could control. You could buy these little comics. I mean, in those days they had things like, you guys probably don't even remember, but they had things like the Beano and Dandy and things like that. And if you look at it, I mean, they cost something like 10 pence, and the amount of artwork that went into this, and you could look at these things, and there was so much to look at, and you could take it away to your own room or whatever. So that, I think, and then I discovered the superhero kind of genre and all that kind of thing. And for a long time, and this was something that only kids did, so the adults didn't belong to this world. So that was quite amazing for me. And I think, so that was a passion, and it was something that I could afford and I could indulge. And then I think as I got older, then suddenly I discovered Bruce Lee and martial arts. And that was just like, wow, that was just like the first. I think I mentioned this on another podcast. I walked into a room at the age of 7, and this is like 1974, and Bruce Lee. This guy had won 100 Bruce Lee posters from the Daily Record, and this room is just covered with Bruce Lee posters from the floor to the ceiling. And he just looked. He was like a superhero basically at that time, and I just thought, wow, that's what I want to. Wow, that. And I realized now that I've been carrying that around in my head for a long time. And I was in this course about a couple of years ago, and I got up and I said in front of all these people, "Oh my God, I just realized I'm never going to be Bruce Lee." I thought, and I was like 49, and everything, doing a job. And I went, "Oh my God, I'm never going to be Bruce Lee." But I actually meant it, because somewhere in my head, that was there somewhere. So it's amazing how those passions and those ideas subconsciously are affecting the way you are. I mean, you're. I mean, Alan, you probably.
I wanted to be Michael Jordan. I wanted to be Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. And at some point, you probably go, "Oh,
I'm not gonna be a Michael Jordan.
I'm not gonna be my." I mean, yeah. I mean, I was like in my 40s when I realized that. Anyway, but I guess that was a passion, and in some way, it's good that I think now I'm really involved with. Like, I want to write a book, and I'm very interested in setting up a book festival, and I'm quite passionate about that. And I'm sure that if I draw a line, that probably I could draw that back to the comic days, where it was something about writing and creativity, and so I could probably draw it back to that. But I've never had that thing where I could, like I went to a profession that was basically a continuation, I think, of something I had to do. I had to do that. And so in a way, when you guys talk about entrepreneurship, there's a bit of me that would like to just go chuck everything out the window and let's see what we can create. I don't think I'll ever do it in that way, but I do that. I don't think I've always had the thing where, wow, I feel passionate about it and let's go after it. It's always been getting into something, and then after a little while, I've had to kind of stick with it, and then passion develops. So that's been my experience.
That's invaluable, because some people can come to believe that if I don't feel it right now, if I don't feel it immediately, if I don't feel it, shortly into the work that I'm doing, or the skill or the talent or the hobby or the work even, professionally, then there's no passion, there's no need for me to continue. But you're saying persevere and continue and really, test it out and see if you can develop passion, and that's invaluable.
I agree with that. For example, not that long ago, I had no idea if I will have passion for entrepreneurship. I only wanted to try and see if I can do this. But I had no idea until I actually made the jump, and then I've been in business for several months. Then I can say, wow, this is actually driving me. Like I can see how I get fired up for about certain things and everything. And the funny part about this is my girlfriend, who's a little bit younger than me, like 3-4 years younger, she looks at me and she says, I wish I had so much passion and I don't know what is my passion telling me this. And I say, just be patient, just like try different things, and it will come, because so many people, they just put pressure on themselves, and they're like, I need passion. I see all these people having passions and I don't have one. And like, there must be something wrong with me. Like, I don't have passion. And they just put pressure on themselves instead of just living their life and just trying new things.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's so true in terms of, particularly in the kind of, I think this has always been socially true, but obviously heightened with the world we live in now, where people are, sharing all the time about their passion and how well they're excelling at their passion and how well their life's going. And even though bits of us can appreciate that that's probably not all totally true, it doesn't stop you feeling like success fatigue online. Like I follow quite a lot of people who are venture capitalists on Twitter, and I tell you, it's demoralizing how successful they all are. They're constantly, every day they've come to a revelation on this, on that, and they've achieved this today, and that their passion has allowed them to unlock this. And that's not real life. That's not how it works in real life. Real life is that sometimes it's really hard, sometimes it's really good, sometimes you have breakthroughs, but it's like it goes in peaks and troughs and cycles. And I think that's, again, it's back to this expectation. Like, what expectation do you have for how these things actually are when you find a passion? Like, I think that I stumbled into this. This was not definitely completely unintentional. I had no idea that this is what I was going to do. When I was in school, I was motivated by the thought of money. That's what I was motivated by. That's what I saw everywhere. MTV had these shows where they showed you all these rich people's houses and all the rest of it. That's what money. And that it worked out so that my business enabled me to travel a lot in the early days, but I had no money. And the fact I was traveling was because it was being paid for ultimately through business deals or whatever. So, but I personally didn't have any cash. And then I realized that you don't need to have cash to be following your passion. And I think this idea that a passionate should always be really like an obvious outcome, and it should be about, finding, but it's every successful and particularly every wealthy person I've ever really met always reverts back to now doing like philanthropic work, because they want to do the thing that they're passionate about, which is often around helping people. Most people, I think, find enjoyment in helping other people. And actually thinking, we've had this model that I really want to flip on its head, is this idea that we don't follow our passion in any shape or form for most of our lives. We just focus on making as much money and as being as successful as possible. And then once we're there, we give back. Well, that requires waiting a very long time for any seismic change. And I think that we need a model of like doing your thing that you're passionate about, living your life, because, otherwise you're going to wait too long. That's the thing I feel, is that we need people to be realizing the things that actually make you happy. And, the amount of people that I know who are, who have, worked in corporate life in particular for a very, very long time, and they're really disappointed when they reach the top of the corporate tree, because it's not what the view is, not what they thought it was. And they've neglected the things that they're truly passionate along the way. And then they're working hard to try and rediscover.
Powerful messages, each of you, and especially Bruce with that last one. Flip it on its head, absolutely. Because if you're investing time and energy in something that doesn't fill you, then it's hard to wake up in the morning. It's hard to stay consistent. It's hard to be in a positive mindset, or even in a healthy mindset. Forget positive, just a healthy mindset. It becomes extremely difficult to have relationships, because it impacts every single relationship that you have. And I don't mean personal, but also professional. So it has a ripple effect when we really do not follow our passion, because it's almost like we're feeling like a part of us is missing. So what values did you each discover you had that enriched your adventurous journey to discover and fulfill your passions, or learn about your passions to fulfill them?
I think probably a lesson I learned early doors was to be when you need other people often to help you, pursue passions, and often other people are involved in that process. And I found that by being really humble and like respectful to people, and not trying to be too much, really enabled me to unlock loads of help from people. And like, my life's full of help from other people. People talk about being self-made. There's no such thing. No one's self-made anywhere in the world. And so all the people that have helped allow me to fulfill my passion, they're the ones that unlock the door. Ultimately, I just chapped on it. And I think that's the thing that a lot of the time is learning to ask for help from people, because other people can help you get there. far quicker than you could ever get there on your own. And I think you'll find you can never get there on your own. You know, you ultimately have to rely on other people.
So as Riham, you know me, we've known each other for a while. You've seen that I'm full of energy. I try to uplift people all the time. And really, I do have passion for life. And I wake up in the morning very early, get a cold shower, and then I tackle the day. It's not always super amazing, like the first 2-3 minutes, but then afterwards, after that shower and everything, yeah, I'm all in, ready to go, and really happy to go for it. But it wasn't always like this. Okay, not that long ago, maybe 2.5, 3 years ago, I didn't know that I'm going to be in business full time. I had a job. I wasn't really sure what I want to do in the future. I was kind of struggling financially and mentally with myself, with some demons from the past and everything. And overall, I was lost, and I did not have that passion in me. And the days were passing by. I would wake up in the morning, have a cigarette, then another one, and then kind of like if there was a day that I didn't work, I would just kind of waste my time, binge watch some Netflix, and really didn't know what to do with my life. Didn't really have anything to look for. I was single, obviously, and then I got to the point where my mental state was so bad. I had some suicidal thoughts. I was getting to the bad spot. And I remember I got to, like, since I consider myself self-aware and also a relatively intelligent guy, I was like, I need to protect myself from myself. And I messaged my brother and I said, like, normally, like, my relationship with my brother is kind of, let's say, dry. We love each other. We give each other a hug when we meet, but we meet maybe once a month or once every 2-3 months. We spend some time asking, "You good? You good? Yeah, good. Have a beer together. Exchange few words, and then take care. See you later." But on that day, I messaged him and I say, "Listen, I want you to come to my house and I want to talk to someone because I have no one to talk to. And if I don't talk to someone, I'll do something really bad to myself." And I just kind of asked him for the first time in my life. I was very vulnerable in front of my brother. And he came, it was at night, he came at night, and I jumped to his car and we were driving around for about an hour. And I told him everything. I said all day that I don't have any direction, I don't have any idea what I want to do, and that I kind of feel shit and my finances are terrible. I think I had no money. I literally, I had zero in my bank account. And what he did was he gave me comfort. He kind of gave me some hugs and then kind of let me out kind of nicely. And the next day he arrived to my house with 2 big bags from like a little supermarket with food for me, brought some food for me. That, because I had no money to really buy food and stuff. And then just kind of after that, I started to like pick myself up and then think about, okay, what I want to do in life and, how to improve. And I don't exactly remember what he said to me, but just the fact that he was there and I was not afraid to be vulnerable in front of him kind of helped a lot. And then from then I bounced back. I started to rethink stuff. And I remember I turned the binge watching of Netflix. I used to watch this show called West Coast Customs about cars. I turned into actually a part of the company that I'm running right now. It's kind of the name of that show is a part of the name for my company. It was not like flick of a switch and I went there and I suddenly have passion for life and I'm feeling so energized and happy and upbeat and people would think that this is fake. No, I built this by being very low, asking for help, getting through that
Cynthia,
pain
they
and
just
then
unmuted
jumping
me
up.
I think that's you brought up something really important there, and I think it's this idea of authenticity. And if you're, I think it sounded like you're being authentic there, and I think that's a big part of it. That about asking for help and connection. So much of the time we're just in this kind of way of looking a certain way, or looking good, or looking keeping up the appearance. And I think that maybe you have to get to the bottom of the barrel, or at some point where you've got nothing left, or things are bankrupt, or you've just got nothing left, and you think, right, I've got to do this, and then you're being authentic. And I guess that's a big part of it for me. Trying to keep that authenticity and honesty in the midst of doing whatever you're doing, which I think is not easy to do.
I
But
agree.
I think if you can do that, then I think that keeps things fresh, and it just keeps things alive.
Well,
You know?
Bruce, like you mentioned social media, that social media is trying to, like, especially Instagram, is trying to make us believe that everybody's life is so amazing, so there's full of passion, and then the sun is always shining, and everybody's got always all this money and the success and everything, and it makes you feel not adequate. It makes you feel like if you don't know where you're going, then there's something wrong with you. Why you have no passion if there's so many good things around? And yeah, that's what happened then.
Absolutely. And though, as I'm listening, is that I think that I'm good at asking for help when it comes to work, but terrible at asking for help anything to do with my personal life. And I think that if I'm being very honest, it's because of the perceived success professionally. It feels like it's even harder to ask for help personally, and it's very difficult sometimes to have to admit when things are not going according to plan, because you feel like you're bursting that bubble that people have of you and perceive you, and then and there's part of me that that works on resilience as well. So like there is part of me that is like, sometimes you need to respond to your own problems. You need to learn how to do that and how to be comfortable with them. But also when things are just too big for one person, you need to share it with someone else. And even that process of sharing, it's cathartic, and that's often sometimes that's all you need, actually, is the person to say nothing. You just have heard you say it out loud, and sometimes I also find the things that I'm worried about, and then I say it out loud, and I'm like, oh, it's maybe not as worrying as I thought it was. Actually, now I've verbalized it and I've heard it. It maybe doesn't feel quite as bad, but I definitely feel like I still need to work on my ability to ask for help. When it comes to my personal life.
I was actually something came up the other day, and somebody was talking about when you're talking about passion, they were talking about this idea that about vampires, and vampires can't see their own reflection, and this idea that if you can't see yourself reflected in other things, or say things in the culture or the community or other people, then you become a monster. And I think that's something that, for me, if you are just going on that kind of pattern and you're not finding a way to genuinely be self-expressed and to genuinely express whatever's going on, and you don't see that outside there as well. And I think this is something that I feel sometimes I don't often see my experience of growing up reflected back at me. You can sort of become a bit isolated. I like that idea of like the vampire. who can't see his reflection, and he becomes this monster. And I suppose if we don't see ourselves reflected in our heads, we do become, our conversations in our heads do become like these big mountains that you know just are difficult to handle. So I think that's part of it for me, that if you are able to make that connection with somebody else, and like you said, if you're sharing it, it does decrease things. So I guess that idea of sharing it, yeah, that's really important. And even like with Alan, you're saying about, you know, you finally connected with your brother by sharing. You've got to have people like that around you. And I must admit, I think having a family and having kids and having that around me, I think is quite good, in that you have to kind of generate yourself again, because kids are going to be authentic, and it kind of forces you out of yourself. So that's, I think, a great thing. But yeah, of course, that only comes when you're older, and I guess you're in a kind of committed relationship, and you know you you know that's not gonna happen necessarily earlier on.
Mm-hmm. Also think, like talking about kind of, not seeing yourself reflected, and also the role that other people play, is that, sometimes people, I think that the people in our lives, we shouldn't look them to fulfill every role in our lives. And I think that's been a big wake up call for me. And I think it's absolutely something that has made my relationship 100 times stronger, is realizing that we're not meant to be everything for each other, because you can't fulfill that in each other. And once you realize that, then you no longer expect that person to, or you no longer, that expectation is lifted from you as well. But equally, sometimes there are friends who are not conducive to the passion you now want to follow. And you've got friendship groups who don't get it, not interested in it, and are kind of holding you back. And I used to think that the advice was, you cut people out your life who hold you back, right? But I feel like now I'm coming to a much more middle ground approach, which is you just accept that certain people in your life play a certain role, and that childhood friends play a very different role in my life than they did when I was a child. And what they think of me and their kind of influence over me changes and diminishes over time. And I think that's quite significant when thinking about how do you pursue your passion. Well, you need to make sure you've got the right people around you to help you to do that, because you're the average of the people you spend most of your time around. And I think even if you're with, the most energetic, optimistic person, and you're generally quite negative, you'll end up some middle version of that. And the same is true as if you're around very, very negative people and you're very positive. It's too exhausting to be positive around people like that. And so you end up being more negative. And so I think realizing that you can curate that rather than like extinguish certain people or because that's, I always thought that was very harsh. But I do think that, but you can learn to moderate and realize that that's also just okay, is that relationships change.
Absolutely. I mean, we all go through different cycles in life, and I know I've heard and read before this quote. I can't remember who said it exactly, but your relationships are either reasons, seasons, or a lifetime. And sometimes seasons shift and change, and we have childhood friends that come and go, and they impact us or mirror what we want or mirror what they're experiencing, and not what's true for us. And we might have friendships that have come into our lives later but are stronger and more supportive, but each one of them has a role, like you said, Bruce. So understanding the value of each, and when you can turn to a friend in need, for example, like Alan, you were feeling like you couldn't turn to anybody, and knowing that your sibling was there, you had a brother that was available, that could come close to you, in your vicinity, and you could be with them. What happens to those people that are living in a different country, that don't have friends, that don't have acquaintances, that don't have mates, that don't have people that they can turn to? They want to find passion in their life. They want to be fulfilled, but are feeling alone. Any advice for them?
One thing that I noticed is since I went through this, I became extremely sensitive towards seeing that and spotting that straight away in others. And also, that's a part, we were talking before about the emotional intelligence and awareness and everything. That's a part of it. Um, I can see what is impacting people and try to lift people up, show them like that there is a, you know, there is a way, uh, give them some comfort, make them smile, um, be like this beacon of light for them. And yeah, I mentioned that before to you, Riham. Like, I want to give that warmth to people because I felt the pain. I want to be also able to help them so they don't have to. And yeah, I think that is one of the passions that I actually have. It's like doing that and being and doing what I'm doing right now, um, running about with camera. That's what I do. I noticed there are a lot of people who are very insecure in front of the camera. And one of the things that I'm doing is just kind of encouraging them and giving them comfort in front of the camera and telling them all about the experiences that people are going through and being empathetic and understanding, and, you know, allowing them to kind of accept themselves and so on. So yeah, I just found passion in that, and goes back to being interested in other people and emotionally intelligent, I would say.
Is that quite often times people want to help, and I think remembering that people actually do want to help. You know, Alan, I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, imagine your brother was really grateful that you actually, you know, took this opportunity to.
He's
You know,
not very talkative guy, so he would never say that. It's kind of weird. I'm sure he will. He was. It's just that he's a type of a person who doesn't, you know, is like, I think people say, a man of few words. So yeah, he wouldn't say much, but I'm sure that he was. It's just that, yeah, at that point, I wouldn't know.
yeah, because I think that's the thing is that like when we like support each other, and I think the thing that can sometimes be really difficult, you know, for people who are having who have had a series of kind of like hard times and knockbacks, and it's feeling quite like, you know, who do I turn to, is that like confirmation bias becomes really, really powerful. And so everything you see is a confirmation of the fact that this isn't going to work for you, or you're not able to do it, or that there's no hope, or there's no way out. And I think that is we all have confirmation bias, but it's like regularly trying to catch yourself on, am I just confirming what my worst fear is here? That helps a bit, because it starts to allow you to see your thoughts almost as separate from yourself. And then I think then trying to find shared interests, shared, you know, passion can sometimes feel like a daunting thing, like find your passion, but like just find a shared interest. And then actually most of the time, you know, that's where community is formed. And again, I think if you're finding yourself, you know, often offering your own help is a great way to elicit help for yourself. And I think that's definitely something I've learned throughout my professional career massively, is that, you know, if I offer help, that is me opening up a door for them to ultimately help me in some way. And then even in your personal life is that if you know, you've got so much control over your actions, and if you can solve something by like giving, then that's actually the easiest possible thing you can literally do. It doesn't always feel easy, but it literally is the easiest thing to change a scenario, is for you to give something. And so, you know, this is just a rant. This is more of a musing thought. I don't know where this concludes this thought, but that's certainly the way I look at it. That's the way I try to process these things when I feel like that.
That's interesting. I mean, I for me, it all comes back down to communication. You know, when you're in that state where you think things are stuck, I think it's about sometimes just declaring and communicating that, look, things are stuck. And as soon as I say, I think things are stuck, then I actually find that then things begin to open up, because I've actually just sort of admitted it and said, okay, I'm in a bit of a breakdown here. There's something going on. And even, and then something seems to move on. And, you know, and just asking for help, does, I find, I think you realize that you come out of your own mind and your own perspective, and when you get that other perspective, um, things just seem to, you know, somebody will say something and it'll seem really obvious, but it just wasn't, because you were just kind of stuck in one kind of vision. And I think, and I suppose the other thing is that sometimes I realize now through life that you can't have a breakthrough until you have some kind of a breakdown, so that it all kind of falls on from that. I mean, somebody once told me that, you know, every solution was at one. No, every problem was once a solution to something. So and I don't know. I've not really tested that out, but I think that's a big part of it for me. So I think that's it, and I think for me it is really about communication, and once you communicate what it is, there'll be somebody that'll agree. I mean, I think Bruce was saying something about from your passion comes community as well, and I suppose every movement started with one person. Like I've been kind of interested in having a Hapkido club, and it's a kind of small art, but I kind of want to have it in the south side. And I thought, you know, I mean, there's one club over in the, I think in the north of Glasgow somewhere, and it's a guy that's there. And I thought, but then I thought, you know, all I need is one other person to train with, and we could literally be quite crap as well. But if we carried on, there'd probably be somebody else that would. That doesn't matter, as long as we're quite happy and we're doing things. Somebody else will probably join on, and before we know it, there's probably going to be 4 or 5 people, and that's it. You've got a club going. So, and I suppose it would. And I actually, I just out of that, I kind of asked somebody, this chap and this instructor, and he said, yeah, I'll come along and do a class once a week. And then I thought, you know, it'd be great to see somebody, you know, we never get these masters coming over from other places, and they're not going to come to Scotland unless you pay them. So I just typed in and I just said, listen, would you like to come to Scotland? They were like, yeah, we'd love to come to Scotland. It'd be brilliant. What a great country. Okay, they did ask to get paid, but, you know, we'll work something out.
Yeah.
So it's just about sometimes it's just about communicating. And I suppose when you're in that state where you don't have passion, you get stuck in your head and you don't communicate, and something, and you know, and I suppose it's reminding yourself that that's sometimes all it takes. So for me, it's all about communication and having avenues of self-expression, whether it's, you know, being able to speak to people or write or creativity in other ways. I think that's really important. Yeah.
One more thing I would add is, if someone doesn't genuinely know what they want to do, what they like, what they want to, what they would be passionate about, or what interest they have. Somebody told me about a great analogy, that it's like, imagine being in a buffet, like a buffet, and just try different bits of foods and see which one you like. And you literally go for one dance class, one martial arts class, you go for, you know, a little bit of skateboarding, you borrow roller blades from someone, and you just try a little bit, and maybe there is something that you will be like, oh, wow, this is nice, I'm going to try again next week. And then you fall into something by accident.
That made me think about I think this issue that I think that men probably suffer from, but I'm sure it's true for everybody, is this, like, again, back to this feeling like I need to be good at it. And, I need to be real, not just good at it. I should probably be the best at this. And it's like you set up that expectation for yourself. And so then if you're not, then you tell yourself, well, maybe that's not my passion then, because I'm not as good as that person was at it, and they maybe seem more of a natural at it. And we can be influenced by other people telling us that we're crap at it, and then we're, oh, well, it can't be my passion then, because everyone else thinks I'm rubbish. But like, no one ever was perfect at anything first time, and we just don't have that type of expectation for other things. For so many other things in life, we really expect that you need to train and study and develop and improve over time. And I think if we relate that back to like just things we're generally passionate about, then it's okay to be a bit crap and to be on that journey, and try and stop comparing yourself to other people, and have a kind of like imposter syndrome. I mean, I know that I've had that massively at times in my life, and that's the thing that can really hold you back. And then you realize that everyone else feels the same way, and that to be an expert in something, very rarely like does someone come along and just anoint you and say you're the expert on it. It's like something that you suddenly realized over time that you might actually have expertise in the thing. And so it's so easy to assume that everyone else must know more than I know, or everyone else must be better at it than I am. And it's funny when you realize that everyone else is feeling exactly the same way at almost exactly the same time.
That when you were talking about that, I couldn't help thinking. I was listening to this guy called, I think his name is Hoist Gracie, and they're these guys that do this thing called Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and it's very fashionable just now. Loads of people are doing it. So this family, the Gracies, they're the best in the world, from Brazil. So he was giving just a wee talk about martial arts and what he's seen in his lifetime about why people stop doing them. Because to get good at it, you've potentially got to be doing it for about at least 4 or 5 years, and then with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu it usually goes on for about 12 or 13 or whatever. Anyway, and I would say, well, what stops people doing martial arts? And people coming out with the whole thing about, well, it's time. Life gets in the way. People have family. People just have injuries. All this kind of stuff. And he said, all that's fine, but the number one thing that stops people from just carrying on is they start to compare themselves to everybody else. So it just kind of mirrors what Bruce was saying, that it's like suddenly going, I'm not as good as him, or he's doing better than me. I'm really crap, like you said. And I think that's probably the biggest passion killer. And you start comparing yourself to everybody else. So yeah, so that's a big part of it for me. It's comparing yourself to somebody else, and keeping that beginner's mind. So and going into anything with that beginner's mind, and I don't mean just a mind where you don't, you forget everything you knew, but you go in there without expectations. And I think that's really important to have.
Absolutely. The only person we can compare ourselves to is the person we were yesterday and the person we want to be tomorrow. So who are we now? And kind of compare it that way. So that's how we can invest in our own personal development. So we're never the person that we were yesterday, because we're always improving and advancing and growing. And we want to be someone different, better, more, pull in whatever values they are or what passion we want. And then that's who we're aiming to become in the future. So you all bring up such amazing points, and thank you for sharing, personal stories and experiences on your values and your passions, and personal stories around asking for support, even when times got really difficult. Thank you, Alan, for choosing life as opposed to anything else, because with you in it, it makes our lives much more fruitful and beneficial, and that much more rewarding, because each and every one of us have value. Each and every one of us has impact. And when we realize that the easiest decision might be at the moment, might be to end one's life, the real impact is, what are we going to do if I didn't succeed? Then what? So know that you have an impact in every single person's life that you choose to impact. And some people that you don't even realize that you impact. So with that said, discover your passions, try something new, find something that might inspire you, or try something completely out of your comfort zone and see what comes of it, and discover your passions. With that said, also join us on our next episode of the Genuine Men's Chat Show, podcast and Zoom Live on a weekly basis, the Zoom Lives, that is. Share, like, and follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. Join our Genuine Men's Chat Facebook group where you can speak to other men and follow up on these discussions. And remember, our motto in 2020 is many men, many conversations. Have you taken your seat at the table yet?